Good evening, everyone. It is Sunday, March 9th, and today I wanted to make a quick video on risking things in your 20s. Now, let's start with defining risk. What is risk? Risk is simply the chance of a loss. While there are many different types of risk out there, when I thought back to my own 20s, there are three main types that I kept repeating, and I want to share with you today. So let's get into it. Number one, financial risk. Now, typically, people think of financial risk as the loss or gain of money in things like the stock market or buying bonds or mutual funds. The other major type of risk in your 20s is things relating to your career. So, say you get another better job offer and you move there. Um, there's a financial risk that maybe you are making more money, and that will help de-risk, maybe any debt payments and help you increase your emergency savings. Since you haven't built up those new management relationships, you're more at risk of maybe getting fired. In addition, depending on where you're watching this video from, there's different employment laws as well. So here in BC, Canada, employers have 3 months to decide whether they want to keep you or not. And essentially, in that 3 month probation, they can fire you for pretty much any reason. There's obviously some restrictions on that too, but it's the rules are very loose. So that's something you have to watch out for as well. Now let's take a step back for a second. So long as your financial house is in order, debts are paid, you have your emergency savings, you already have some money in your retirement, you can take more financial risk. What I mean by this is, if you find that stock or maybe you find a crypto play that you want to invest in, and say you put $10,000 into it and it just crashes down to zero. While that would hurt, it's better to lose $10,000 at 25 than say 100,000 at 45 or maybe a million plus at 65. So as long as you balance your own risk, however that looks like for you, you're going to be fine. Now let's switch back to the career side. Say you take that new job and you get a big raise. However, it's not working out. Maybe you're fighting with your manager or the job description doesn't match your actual duties. Again, kind of who cares? As long as you keep working for a little bit longer, find another job, even if it's the same pay or lower, you still have that 30 or 40-year runway until that 65, target range for retirement, and you'll be fine. Now, let's get into part number two. Number two, lifestyle risk. This doesn't have a formal definition, but I would define this as anything from a lifestyle choice that can seriously and negatively impact your life. This could be things like drug and alcohol addiction, gambling, too much adult entertainment. There's a lot of things that can essentially be lifestyle landmines. So let's take a step back and let's navigate away from those landmines and let's think about other things that might not be landmines, but they might seriously derail your progress towards whatever goal or lifestyle changes you want. The first one I thought about was incompatible partners. Simply put, partners that are not compatible are at best going to derail you from your goals. At worst, they can lead you into depression, lead you to one of those previous lifestyle landmines, and really derail your life. The quicker you can spot, a relationship that isn't working out well, the quicker then you can pivot. Obviously, it's going to take time. You're not going to know maybe a relationship is going to be toxic at the beginning, or also when you're in the weeds of it, you're not going to know that's toxic at that time either. Now, part two, incompatible jobs. Like romantic relationships, if you have a toxic relationship, it's going to be very mentally draining. A job is really just a financial relationship. You trade your time and they pay you the money. But if things aren't going well and you have that problem with your manager or your coworkers, they're likely not going to change. They could change, but you shouldn't depend on that. So you really have to monitor how your workplace is treating you. Now, the third part, dangerous hobbies. Now, there's a lot of things we can get into here, but you really should almost evaluate the amount of joy and happiness you get relative to the danger. Now, I'll use one that I'm familiar with, motorcycles. Motorcycles, you can get an extreme amount of fun out of them. They're extremely fun to ride. The sense of freedom is amazing. Feeling the wind and the sun in your body is fantastic. Now, when you're riding a motorbike, you can really mitigate some of this risk by doing a few things. The number one would be at GAT, all the gear all the time. This means you're always wearing your helmet, your jacket, pants, shoes, and gloves at all times whenever you go out. They say you dress for the slide, not for the ride. Number two is to adjust your driving patterns. So now we're having all the gear, we've de-risked it a bit. Now we go on to the driving patterns itself. Now, when I was going through my motorcycle safety class, the instructor said if you remove these three elements, you reduce your chance of a crash by 85%. Number one, not riding with any drugs or alcohol in your system. Number two, not doing any dangerous maneuvers, so like bobbing and weaving through traffic. And number three, removing excessive speeding. So if you do those three things, again, you're minimizing the chance of some negative loss actually occurring. Now, when before it was up here, maybe your risk was high and your reward was high. Now your risk is probably low to medium, but your reward is still high. Now, you can probably apply this to a lot of things. I'm not familiar with, say, skiing or mountain biking, but I know those are kind of dangerous sports, probably rock climbing as well. You can apply this in your own life. Think of kind of hobbies of like the risk to reward. How much fun are you actually getting relative to how much you're actually jeopardizing? Now, let's move on to part three, environmental risk. How do I define this? This is anything like your living space to who you hang out with and who do you expose yourself to. Now, let's start with part one, diet. Depending on what things you put in your body, it's going to change not only how you look, but how you think and how you feel. I'm not going to tell you what the best diet is. There's so many people that are educated and more intelligent on the subject than me, but kind of universally, there's a lot of things that people agree upon that are not good for you. This can include things like junk food, alcohol, or maybe highly processed foods as well. So, my advice is the quicker you can moderate these types of universally bad foods in quotations and limit your exposure to them, the quicker you're going to get results. Number two, managing loneliness. Once you leave university, you're going to realize fairly quickly that the world, I wouldn't say it's necessarily a lonely place, but it can make people lonely. What I mean by that is that there's no kind of forced social interactions besides, say, a job. And even those, depending if you're working online, it's really easy to become lonely. So as you get older, you have to really focus on one, maintaining any relationships you do have, and number two, because you're going to probably lose people as they get married and have families, focus on expanding your social network at the same time. This can be done through, fitness classes, dance classes, what else? Going to meetup groups, social networking events. There's a lot of things you can do, but that really should be a priority. Now, let's go to part three, exposing yourself to toxic people. This could look like family or friends, maybe that relationship we talked about in part two, but the people you surround yourself with are really going to influence yourself. Think of toxic people kind of like expired food. Well, if you have that, week old milk, it's probably going to be okay in a small portion, or maybe that cheese, has the mold on it, you just cut it off and you use the non-moldy part, you're probably going to be fine. In moderation, you'll probably be okay. But in the long run, if you're constantly eating expired food, something's going to be wrong with your body. Whether it's always an upset stomach or whatever, there's going to be problems. I think of it the same way with people. The more you expose yourself to toxic people, the more you're going to take on yourself. So you really have to watch out and make sure you're surrounding yourself with people that are moving towards your goals. This could also be expanded to people you live with. Do they share the same goals as you? Perhaps they're not toxic, but they just have different plans for their life. That doesn't make them bad, but if they're not aligning with you to go towards the goal that you want, that's going to eventually influence your own ambition and goals. So you kind of have to, unfortunately, maybe cut them out or maybe just not live with them. Again, not saying they're bad, but maybe they're just, there's a time and place, and living with them is not that time or place if you can afford it. Now, finally, I wanted to think about the city you actually live in. You can have the best apartment, you can have, maybe the best roommates, or you live alone, you have the best setup, you have a great job. But if kind of the zeitgeist of the city doesn't match with your own perception, then you're going to have problems. We think about, okay, what are our beliefs? What do we actually stand for? Maybe it's your political opinion. Does your political opinion match the culture of the city that you reside in? Maybe it's also your personal beliefs. Do you have a religion that you follow? Do you have a book that you abide by? That's going to also influence what type of cities work well with you. In conclusion, you can really mitigate a lot of the key exposures and risks you have in your 20s just by simply thinking through, okay, what type of lifestyle you want and evaluating your life choices. Maybe bar the lifestyle landmines like, having an unexpected child or, drugs and alcohol problems. You can screw up a lot in life and still recover and be fine, whether that's through developing your personal relationships, a career, money investing. There's a lot of things you can do and mess up and still be okay. So get out there, experiment, and let me know what you've done down in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and talk to you soon again. Bye-bye.